You should back it up on your laptop, right? But you don't.
Put it in the cloud.
Put it, well, wherever. Put it up your arse, I don't care. You know?
Lose it.
Yeah. You might feel better, feel okay for a while. But a suppository this big might, well, I'm not sure exactly what it would do. But anyway, so you're going to get all this, but don't lose it. We used to put them on dog tags, like. They still lost it. So how was the wee one? The wee one from last night?
Beast.
Your boy. Not your boy, my boy.
I'm disappointed.
Huh?
He's ruthless.
You know, I do cry in the seminar. I haven't cried at this seminar, but I've had a few good laughs. But I mean, I haven't cried. Yes, he's ruthless. He's arguably of the guys from the Industrial Revolution time. He was allegedly the worst. He made all those other guys pale in complexion. And then he got goody two-shoes towards the end. And as they all do. What else about Andrew? And it's just coincidental. By the way, I almost bought Skibo Castle about 20 years ago. It was for sale. It was before they made it into a luxury kind of country club, and before they did all that, and it was for sale for £7 million. And the main reason I didn't, because this estate came with one indentured slave employee, one guy. And he lived to be in his late 90s. But they had over 100 that come with the estate. In other words, you got to support them, you got to feed them, you got to give them a hospital, all that. Over 100. And even though my one guy here, Mr. Anderson, was a nice old man, I couldn't think of 100 of them, taking care of them and making sure they get to school and bringing in because a school teacher to teach at the local school there, I passed on it. And then the Savory, I believe Peter bought it one time and somebody else bought it, and then they turned it into a luxurious place. It had a rundown 18-hole golf course. It had 105 bedrooms. 105 bedrooms. And I thought, well, shit, all the money we've spent just on 20 bedrooms. I mean, I could just see the numbers. But, and he's just, from the down the road. So what else about, other than being ruthless, what else about?
He spotted opportunities and went straight for it. The first it was the telco, then it was the railroads, and from the railroads he got the steel. So then, and he just went straight for it.
Correct. Didn't spreadsheet it to death. Didn't help his buddy, was it Fisk? Frisk.
No, Frisk was his kind of assassin.
No, but who was the guy that he didn't help? Scott. Left him in the wilderness, didn't he?
Yeah.
The guy that helped him, right?
Got him Ritz.
Yep. Just left him. Didn't leave him for dead exactly because he still had money, but and that happens quite often because they weigh their I want to help this guy, but what am I going to have to give up to help him? How much damage? Am I going to have collateral damage? And they go through all this. And the lawyers always tell you, don't help him. The lawyers that were advising him, I'm sure, although he didn't blame it on the lawyers, will always tell you, don't help him. He's a big boy. He can take care of himself. I don't know how many times my lawyers have told me that. He's a big boy. But I do it anyway. What else about Mr. Carnegie? And remember, the model that we're doing is his model. He didn't call it QLA, and he didn't call it motivated, one moving part, motivated seller, but it was all the same.
He was the biggest in the industry, out of the whole steel industry.
Bigger than Great Britain.
Correct?
He was real dirty when he sent those letters about the competing railroad, or the competing steel mill.
Yeah.
Homogeny, was it?
Yeah.
It doesn't have homogeny. What the hell does that mean?
Just bullshit.
I don't know.
It's bullshit. It's bullshit.
Sounds like a consortium. So.
It's like consortium. It's an amorphous. You don't know what it is. But yeah, and but in Scotland, especially from here south, you can't find anybody that has any bad thing to say about him. But I mean, every other town's got a library, a school. That he gave money, he donated money to his little house, his little wee house is like a museum now, where he was born. And in those days, the guys were born in their houses. But he was a relentless, unswerving, ruthless businessman. And he cut to the chase, had self-confidence, and he wasn't an alpha male. It's hard to be an alpha male when you're only 2'8", but anyway, he wasn't any of those things like Steel Ballmer, who's a big guy. But he epitomizes the things that we've talked about, the characteristics of a majority of the, or not a majority because the majority aren't, but a majority of the guys that we've talked about are like the traits that he portrayed, or he held high. And then towards the end of his life, and then you don't hardly read anything about the one daughter he had. He was 51 when he married. I think she was 30 something. Or, yeah. And anything else?
He invested $275 and it paid him $5,000 a year.
Yeah, that sounds like a Ty Lopez deal. Yeah, $5,000 a year was a horrendous amount of money then. Horrendous amount of money. And if I remember correctly, didn't he make $7 a week?
His railroad salary was 5% of his annual income from investments.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he carried on till the turn of the century, the 19th century. And then the last 15, 20 years of his life, he was busy trying to give away his money and pay for all the heartache he caused. Not dissimilar to the guys today. And he was in the era of some real big magnets of industry. And when the names and or the definitions were written about the magnets of that era, and you can just see them in that particular movie. Didn't depict it as much as some of the others from the Discovery and History Channel, where the 4 or 5 of those guys are sitting in a room smoking cigars and deciding how they're going to cut up the country. And the interesting thing about it in the railroads, and I don't think it was mentioned in that film, is that when the East and West met, the railroads, roughly in the center of the United States, they had different gauges. For whatever reason, that one was using 10 gauge and one was using 14 gauge, and so when they got together and they drove that golden spike, there were 2 different gauges, and so they had to resurrect or rip up a lot of the railroad because the gauges didn't match. You would think the engineers would have had the same gauge, and that's why I was just reading an email this morning. Remember, I told you that banks make mistakes on these papers, and just one of you has written a mercy fuck email. What do I do now? Because the bank made a mistake, and now they're short some almost $300,000, and the deal's supposed to close next Wednesday. Next Wednesday. And that means his board didn't check the numbers, because there's plenty of numerate people on his board. They should have checked the numbers, but they didn't. And so now he's scrambling around. Somebody had their hand up. Yes, sir.
Carnegie was actually raised to kind of have a empathy for the working man, and at one point he did actually decide that he was going to kind of throw it all in and become more altruistic and so on.
Yeah, but that didn't last too long.
Yeah, because he read the works of Spencer, and Spencer sort of said, no, it's an evolutionary thing. You're evolutionarily superior to these other people, and that's why you're richer, and it's okay to tread on them because of this, and then he kind of went down that road.
And Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and these other guys thought when Steve was alive, and even currently the guys that are currently the super wealthy, many of them, I won't say all of them, but many of them think they're superior, and they're a superior race, and they deserve to be rich, and the rest of the world deserves to be cannon fodder.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to slip into that mode when you have everything or almost everything you think you want. It's not a matter of what you need, because we can get along with, one suit and 2 shirts and etc. It's what you want, not what you need. You don't need 5 cars and 3 planes and 6 houses, and I had all that stuff at one time till Sally and I downsized. But it's fun, especially if you're poor, and not all these guys started poor, many of them did, to add to arrows to your quiver. And arrow is another plane. What can you possibly do with 200 suits, and what can you possibly do with 150 pair of shoes? What can you possibly do with 100 pairs of underwear? But you get them, and it's not just because people give you stuff. Nobody gives me underwear at Christmas or any of that, but I mean it's because you continue to buy stuff, and you just continue to buy, and then at some point you sit back and say, you run out of space on the walls to put paintings. You run out of drawer space to put shirts, socks, and underwear. You run out of closet space to put your suits, sports coats. You run out of space. And then
Run out of room in your garage for your cars.
That too. But I mean, you also
Buy new space.
Pardon?
Buy new.
Well, yeah. But then after you have 4 or 5 houses, and then then you start. As I told you in Monte Carlo, Sally and I discovered that we only went one time the year before before we got rid of our place there, and then a whole year we didn't go. And so, why do you have it? And I'm not complaining, but Monte Carlo is expensive, and it's like living in a fishbowl. And you really don't want the tourists to come for the racing, because the town gets all fucked up with all the tourists. And so then you finally wake up one day and say that then you do a reverse and you start getting rid of all the stuff. And it always takes longer to get rid of the stuff than it did to accumulate it. It almost always takes longer. Anything else about Mr. Carnegie? Yeah.
He compared work to war.
Yes, he did. Now, you've heard that. Your action plan is going to be a war plan, because we are at war. Fortunately, you're significantly more equipped to win these battles than the majority of everybody else out there, other than other people that are following QLA. There's no comparison. It's like the famous line in the movie with Kevin Costner movie about Al Capone, just like a guinea to bring a knife to a gunfight. Everybody else has got knives, and you have guns, you have howitzers, you have artillery. There's no comparison. And you are able to do this with really less equipment, because when you're not bringing in, for the most part, equity into the transaction, and it's only commercial debt tied to seller's financing, the deals get done quicker, and they can be changed at the last minute, and you don't have to go back to the credit committee and get an underwriting. It's just you and the seller, and it's a lot simpler. And even those deals can fall apart. But once you understand the vulnerable points or the pressure points of a transaction using QLA, it's much easier to figure out what may go wrong before it goes wrong, and then be able to close the deal. Anything else about? Yes, ma'am.
He had self-doubts before, and he would say this affirmation as like all is well and upward and onward, and that self-doubt vanished.
Yeah, I mean, everybody on the planet doubts. The difference is the high-performance people don't share their doubts. I told you a couple of days ago, when you come home and how was it at the office? What did you do? That's just rhetoric that somebody wrote in a pamphlet one time. Everything's great. Couldn't be better. This is what I would answer, and what I did answer. Couldn't be better. Everything's great. How was your day? Terrific. How was your day? How do you look at the future? Better than terrific. Because words matter. And if you allow yourself, even if you had a shitty day, if you allow yourself to share that doubt with your kids, with your significant other, your parent, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't know of any day that I was depressed. If I was depressed, I sure as fuck never knew it. Some people that are really suffer from depression, manic depression, their highs are high and their lows are low. But the outlet, your outlet, will be your affirmations, maybe that's why Napoleon Hill said to say affirmations 10 times a day. I'm not sure. Maybe it's from input that he got from Mr. Carnegie when he started to write that book, these many decades ago. Anything else about? Yes.
So he sold his business for $480 million, but he could have got another $100 million.
Correct. Well, and the story is he could have got even a lot more than that extra $100 million.
Yeah.
But that $480 million made him the richest guy on the planet.
Because he never asked.
Correct. He didn't. He wanted out.
Motivated seller.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A motivated seller. And at some juncture, you went out. And most of the guys that are getting out or have gotten out turn to philanthropy. They turn to philanthropy, giving their money away, trying to do good. And of course, some of them don't. Some of them just stay, in the saddle until they drop dead. But it's a good choice. It's not a nice choice. 'Cause I don't like the word nice, but it's a great choice to have. You either go to the whip and continue to generate generational wealth, create generational wealth, or you pack it in or semi-pack it in. Right now, I'm at 2/3 pro bono. 2/3 of the stuff I do is for free. 1/3 of the stuff I do isn't. The 1/3, the seminars that I do, that's part of my 1/3. But the mentor program, which is free, but at some juncture, I may be, instead of 2/3, 1/3, I may be 80/20 or 90/10. But that's a choice you can make, and it's normally based on your health. My health is still super, other than my arthritis that I have. And please, I don't need any remedies, guys. Don't send me any witchcraft shit about, that they can fix my arthritis, okay? I appreciate the effort, but don't, okay? Pretend you did, but don't, okay? But other than my arthritis, I'm in superb health. And so I can continue to work. Brian Rose fully expects me to continue to do this until I'm in my 80s. I'm not sure I'll do that, but it'll depend. But health is fickle. The older you get, even if you're healthy, when shit goes wrong when you get older, it really goes wrong. And so even though my heart is sound and all that other stuff, but I have no intention of getting ill. Okay, YouTube. Thank you.